So I am really glad that I'm finally getting around to making this video for you around all things Achilles ruptures and my road to recovery at 18 months post rupture. I'm really glad to see, and one of the reasons I'm making this video is when I logged back into the vlogs I created when I first ruptured my Achilles, a few people have subscribed, so thanks for subscribing. But there are a ton of views that these videos are getting, and I remember how traumatic of an experience it is to tear your Achilles. For me, it was the first time I've had any sort of major injury, and sports and activity is really important to my life. So I am surprised that people are watching my videos. I'm not surprised that people are so interested in videos around Achilles ruptures and how to get better from them. I have to say, I can only apologize that I didn't make videos after week 11 or 12. And I think the real reason is there's some point in the trajectory of your Achilles rupture that you're just going to want to get on with your recovery. And I'm glad to say the anxiety kind of falls away around it. I would say, at least from my experience, the time I was most interested in videos was in the first 3 months of rupturing my Achilles. And then I kind of just took on my own recovery journey. I had some good support with physio, so maybe that's part of the reason why I didn't come back to watching more. Anyways, I'm going to talk you through 18 months of recovery. That's where I'm at the moment. I'm going to show you what my calf muscle looks like and my less interesting Achilles. It's harder to see any difference there really. I'm going to talk to you about my mistakes. I'm going to talk to you about what I think are the key aspects of recovering your Achilles really well. I'll show you the kind of things I've been able to do, and I hope you can tell I'm actually traveling at the moment, and for the next 3 months that my life has just returned to normal, and it did a while ago. In terms of my performance in sports and how it's doing, I would say, in summary, there's room to still improve, which we're going to talk about. But I've been able to get back to all of the sports I was playing before. But let's get back to more detail a bit later. I've also made notes, which I'm going to refer back to so I can be quite concise. I'm going to make a 2-year video where I can maybe get into the gym and record some of these exercises for you. I'm going to make do with the way I can show you them now. Let's just quickly jump into how they look. Let me show you what my Achilles look like. I'm going to do a couple of calf raises so you can see what they look like. Now, you can probably tell that my left Achilles, my left calf, isn't as built up as my right yet, even 18 months after rupture. Talk a little bit more about that shortly maybe, but let me just show you the kinds of things I've been able to do and talk you through a bit of a journey. So I'm going to scroll through my phone on Instagram. It's the easiest place for me to show you some things I uploaded, and I can talk you through a timeline. Right, so what I want to show you is a little video I had on my Instagram when I ruptured my Achilles, but that's not going to give you too much information. And then I want to show you, this was actually within a period where this was when I was in Bali. So this was in the sort of third quarter of my recovery. And you can see I'm able to get back to quite a lot of the training that I was doing. This is kind of something you call animal flow. As you can see, around the 7 to 8 month mark, I was really able to start doing exercises and making use of that foot in quite a normal way. Obviously, it was still lacking strength. But yeah, that's the last thing I wanted to show you. Handstand. I was able to start kicking back up again, which is actually quite a big move when it comes to my left calf, because I kick off on that. Do I kick off on that foot? No, I don't. But I've got back to it. This is just me again. The same time in Bali, I'm able to do things, go up on the parallel bars. This is an important one. So I actually climbed. I can't remember the name of the mountain. Mount Batur, and I would say this was a real struggle for me. My left Achilles hadn't recovered enough. I was able to walk uphill, and my right leg took all of the brunt of that walk. It was about 1,000 meters up, I think. It was a real struggle for me. I struggled with my cardio, but I really struggled with pain in my right foot because I just couldn't put
enough weight through my left foot to climb. So that was a learning point for me. And again, that was in January 2024. I ruptured my Achilles in the end of April, but let's just say May. So May, June, July, October, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. So about 9 months after that walk uphill was a little bit too much for me. I would say, again, you will see here, so I do kick up on my left leg. So I'm able to kick up with that left leg, which I think is a big result. This was in March, I believe. If you look at the date, March 22, and I posted it around the same time I played. So within a year, I was actually back to playing sports. My left leg is still not as strong, but this was actually the first time I got back onto a badminton court, playing with a buddy of mine. So as you can see, got back to sport. A couple more videos I want to show you. I started doing some ghosting. The one thing I want to mention, I've taken a note on, is flooring. So if you see on a squash court, the floor is sprung, which is why I don't think I would have ruptured my Achilles on a squash ball, because there's some play in that floor. When I'm running, I can feel the floor has a little bit of give. The one thing I would say, or badminton courts like this, they're kind of all-purpose courts and they're not sprung. They're kind of built for longevity of the floor rather than longevity of your body and Achilles and limbs. So I would say that's one big learning that I've realized, is pay attention to the surfaces that you're exposing your body to, because some of them you're not meant to repeatedly jump up and down on, and they're just not built, unfortunately, for the sport that you're playing up at. And that's why I would say I think I ruptured my Achilles on the badminton court. At the floor, the concrete was not sprung. I like this video because it shows I can jump up and grab a bar. I won't make you watch the whole of it, but I do jump back down again. So you got your jumping force going up and then your eccentric coming back down and landing, which I think is important. Last one I'm going to put on, and last video I actually posted quite a while ago, is getting back to doing deadlifts. And I would say the important thing to note around deadlifts is actually it's quite difficult to get into the full position at the ground level. So wear trainers for sure, because it will elevate your heel above your toe area. So give you a little bit more mobility or flexibility. It will give you just a little bit more range. Or not force you into a range so you can do that exercise. The other thing I would say is it's really useful to actively push through the floor, even though your ankle's not going through a huge movement there. You can actively push your feet through the floor when lifting a heavy weight off the ground, and you're creating a bit of an isometric strength exercise in your left and right Achilles, which is really useful, I think. So we're going to talk about isometrics in a minute. So that's where it's at. That's the kind of exercises I've been able to do. I've been playing a lot more badminton with people at work, and I am trying to run more often now. I was actually running, I think, we go back to videos. I was actually still running. I started running, February. So I was back running. That is me running around February. It didn't feel bad at all. I would say, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, active engagement of that leg is something that's different to just being able to get back to doing those exercises. There's a big difference. And I think it's the same in the sports I'm playing. I'm back playing those sports. Am I using that left leg optimally is probably a bigger question mark, where more of my recovery lies in the next 6 months. And one thing you'll get from me shortly, you'll realize, is that I just think about recovery as a really long time run that doesn't have an end. Much like exercise, with developing our muscles. Why would this be any different? What is it? Why doesn't it stop recording? Right, so let me get in fact
to my notes. So what I would say is, so weeks 1 to 12, you can go back and watch those vlogs in more detail if you want to. What I would say, my takeaways from that is that I wish I focused a little bit less on just getting back to the normality of life, and I relaxed a little bit more so I didn't have those small hiccups. If you go back and watch those videos, you'll see that I tripped up one day and landed a bit heavily on my left foot, which actually could have, and it looked like it did impact my Achilles tendon recovery from the ultrasound when I went to my physio. And I had another day where I stepped off a curb and landed a bit heavily, and that didn't feel too good. Just so you know, in case you haven't watched the other videos, I worked with a physio about every month who is actually a really good high-end physio, works with the NBA and is a specialist in Achilles and kind of ankle foot injuries. So really good guy to be working with. And the good thing was when I went to see him for my physio appointments, he had an ultrasound machine in the room, so you could just have a quick look at the quality of the tendon. Do I think it's a necessity? Probably not. Do I think it gives me a mental boost that I'm being looked after and I just have some additional data to keep me focused on my recovery and what I should be doing? I think it does. When he showed me that, I kind of took it a little bit more seriously, that I need to lay off kind of just getting back to normal life and pushing so hard and let that Achilles heal. So I'd say weeks 1 to 12, do the exercises as I show you and as you may have from your own physios, but try to make sure the quality of that tendon that heals, because this is the critical period for that tendon to heal, is good. If you're in a boot, great, walk around. It seems like putting some resistance and pressure through that tendon helps it recover in the right way, but you don't need to be putting it through too much. And I would say the other thing that I remember from that period was I thought it was probably normal, and it wasn't, that my Achilles and that sort of region of my foot was quite inflamed, and that should have been a sign to actually lay off. So you don't want inflammation in that area, especially when you're going into like weeks 5, 6, 7, 8. And the thing that I did then was to put my foot on a wall to let some of that fluid drain out. But again, it's a sign that I was doing a little bit too much, and I wish I did a little bit less, because maybe the quality of that tendon would be slightly even greater, and then my recovery would have been even better. Just to talk about my recovery, when I gauge it from what my physio says, it could have been better. Some other people have recovered quicker. Now that's it. I think it's important to note that our recoveries are just personal to our own lives. Maybe some of the mistakes I made, potentially, but also just differing abilities and recovery speeds. I would say also weight makes a difference. I was comparing myself to this other vlogger, and I can't remember his name. I think it was Sam, who I've mentioned in previous vlogs, who was lighter than me, and he got back to some exercises and a single leg calf raise, much quicker than I did. And it was a little bit off-putting, or it was a little bit depressing not to just have the same recovery. I was putting in so much work, and I couldn't even get my heel off the floor. So I would say don't be too down and depressed if you're not seeing the same speed of recovery other people are seeing, especially in vlogs and stuff. Mine wasn't quick. I had to be really patient and just keep digging in and doing the work. So I am heavier than Sam, so that's something I didn't take into account potentially. But also maybe my rate of recovery is just different, and my lifestyle, stress factors, whatever else would have made a difference. So I'd say don't compare yourself. And I can totally see if you're in a position right now with your Achilles recovery where you're not seeing the progress you want. I would say for me that really happened between perhaps not straight out of the boot. I didn't have great expectations, but from month 6 to around month, I would say 10, 11, maybe 12, I just wasn't getting the results I wanted. I still put in the work, but yeah, I wasn't able to get my heel off the floor and just get back to things I expected to do. And you know what, it's not uncommon. There's Aaron Rodgers, there's lots of famous people that have ruptured their Achilles, as I've mentioned before, Kevin Durant, David Beckham, Kobe Bryant. And Aaron Rodgers was talking about being back at play within like 2 to 3 months. And even though that was a ridiculous expectation, and he probably was just saying that to manage a lot of other things that weren't to do with his Achilles, like his career, and for people not to write him off, especially at his age in the sport. His recovery took way longer than he expected as well. So you're not alone, and mine hasn't been ideal, but I've got back to the things that I want to do. And I would say my actual example of recovery is not the greatest one. So I hope if you do all the right things, you may have something equally good or even better. Let's talk about milestones. By the year mark, you may not see huge changes in the amount of muscle gain you have in your calf. So like really push and really focus on your recovery to the year mark. I would say it doesn't hold true. I've seen pretty big development in my calf post the year mark. And I will also say some of this research, you just don't know what it's based on. Many people after a year probably get fed up of all the physio exercises and just stop focusing on the calf as much as they should, especially once you can get back to doing things in normal life that you wanted to, like playing badminton, for instance. There's only a very few small proportion of people that will appreciate that even though you can get back to doing certain things you were doing before, the quality of the movement, you may be making physical compensations to allow it, and then you to keep you focused on your recovery and rehab for another 2 years potentially. And don't let the timelines put you off. This is just like training, training your biceps to get bigger biceps. You're just continually training to get a bigger and stronger and more resilient and powerful calf muscle. That's the way I see it. But when it comes to milestones, I would say that year mark does seem like a really important one, and maybe 9 months potentially to get back to some sports, running, or I was back on a badminton court before the year mark, but set that milestone. I think it's really important then once you hit the year mark and you're past it is to focus on the next milestone, which is 18 months. If you've not hit the recovery you wanted by the year mark, as I hadn't, then think, what am I going to achieve by 18 months? And to be honest, 18 months is actually a more realistic and good timeline in terms of getting that muscle development back in your calf once you started to strengthen that area. And once you hit 18 months like I have recently, then 2 years is going to be the next mark for me. What am I going to achieve by then? And how will it be different? Let's quickly cover 3 to 6 months. Not a huge amount happens. I'm still doing recovery with bands. I would say the important thing to note here is to go at your own speed. I was given an exercise by my physio, and I should have regressed it, which was trying to do a single leg negative. So going up on 2 feet into a calf raise and then trying to come back down on the injured one. And it was just way too hard. My Achilles and calf were nowhere near the strength level to even try to control it. So it was just a quick drop back down. Being kind of gritty, the gritty person I am, I just stuck with it for a month. And I would say it would have been more beneficial to find some sort of regression than to stick with that for a month. Because the benefit of doing an exercise that you can barely execute well is not as useful as doing an easier exercise you can execute reasonably well. So I would say for me, the regression of that would have been an exercise I'm going to talk about, which would have been to jump onto a leg press machine, but you use it for a calf raise. And the way you do that is just you hang your feet lower down the plate you put your feet on so that your heels are hanging off at the bottom. And then you can use that as a calf raise device where you're not trying to put your whole body weight on, which I think is really useful. The 6 to 9 month mark, I actually was doing something similar to what I am now. I was traveling, and I would say I wish I would have done some other exercises during that period better, which I'm going to talk about. I did in my 9 to 12 month period. But it was also just good to relax, get out and about. I was still doing my calf raises. I was doing a lot more under body weight, and I think the one key aspect I can take away, and I hope you can take away because I can't use that anymore, for that period at least of recovery, was to use more machines before I started using body weight. I weigh about, at the moment, we're in the region of about 80 kilograms, and I would say to start putting that sort of load on my Achilles and calf was a bit too early. I should have taken some of that load off, and you can either do that through holding walls, taking some weight off by using maybe a chair when you're doing your calf raises, but also you can use machines and you can actually just incrementally increase the weight, which I think is a much more useful way and something I wish I made better use of at that point in my recovery. In months 9 to 12, I started to get back into sport because you want to include a little bit of unpredictability in the joint, right? The ankle joints are joints that don't just work in that calf raise motion. You're running, you may trip, you may do all these sorts of unpredictable moves when you're playing sports. So I was really glad to start playing things like badminton again. The one thing that did happen in that period was I played badminton with actually a group of people that played regularly who invited me to play with them. And the mistake I made was I played for too long. I played for about an hour. Again, the badminton court, I'm not sure if the floor was sprung, so I'm not sure if I should have been back onto it. The one thing I don't think I appreciated enough. With an Achilles rupture, my right leg is also trailing behind where it normally is. I haven't, for that year or that 9-month period, I hadn't been engaging in sport in the same way, so I shouldn't expect the same level of elasticity and explosivity from those joints as I should have. And at about the hour mark, just as I was about walking off the court, last shot of the game sort of thing, for that game, I was actually going to continue playing a bit longer. I felt something, a little bit of a niggle or a tear in my right Achilles. And my physio, when I went to see him, actually did confirm that there was some noise there in the ultrasound. It wasn't a big tear. I was able to walk home and whatever, but it was a bit of a scare for me and a wake-up call to think, I need to rehab both my feet, get back to sport in the way that I want to. But again, not to forget what I haven't been doing for the previous months, and then to set my expectations going forward. Rehabilitation is not just going to be for this Achilles, it's just going to be a lifelong thing now to make sure I'm prepared for the sports I want to play, and where I take gaps from those sports to, when I come back, to see what needs to be done to get me back to a place where I can play properly. So that was between 9 to 12 months. I would say in that period, I was really glad I found, around 9 to 12 months, and maybe even slightly after, I found a good gym where I could utilize the equipment I wanted. That really felt like I actually started to push on with the development of my calf muscle and strength in my left calf. And I would say that's ongoing. I found some exercises I really like, which I'm going to show you and talk to you about. And at the 2-year mark, I'm going to re-record this in a gym where I can actually demonstrate these a lot better. But for now, I'm going to make do with what I have. Let's talk about the 12 to 18 month mark really quickly, because I'd say it's really boring. I am just progressing 2 exercises with weights, strength, and explosivity week on week. The exercises are the bent leg, which I'll demonstrate when we get to exercises. Bent leg calf raise, where you just are sat, similar to I'm sat now. You have a weight somehow over your knees, and you're just trying to get as high as you can. The other one is a straight leg calf raise, and I do that on a leg press machine. You can also do it on a standing machine, but I would say I'm still struggling with the level of strength I want in my left calf to still do body weight the way that I want to. So I'm still regressed on a leg press machine where I put my feet closer to the bottom, my heels hang off the plate, and I can press up my calf raises and do them on that machine, do them single leg, double leg. Isometrics have also played a part in my journey, so that's important. What else would I say on exercises? So let me just quickly name the exercises while we're here. So I would say in the recovery portion, do the stuff that I've shown you previously with bands. You can go back and watch those, but everything is effectively a build-up of that. I then was doing these kind of plyometric walks with a calf raise. These were really depressing to do at the beginning because my left leg just wouldn't get off the floor. It was so much work. I can show the way you see it now is it's so much better, and I actually am able to do a calf raise. The other thing I was doing was the eccentrics, but they weren't working so well for me. And then I would say I've been doing skipping. So skipping I introduced at around the year mark. That was doing 20 to 30 double leg skips, and then doing 5 on one leg, 5 on the other leg, maybe taking a break, or sometimes just continuing and switching feet. Trying to get some of that power and elasticity back into that calf muscle, but also just checking that it feels okay to be doing. The bent leg calf raise on the machine was really good, where you get to load up some weight over while you're sat down and you get to do your calf raises. I would say don't underestimate the power of your calf raise straight-legged on a leg press machine. The interesting thing that my physio said to me that is so true was that when you injure your Achilles and tear it, it tends to be in the straight position. So that should be the position that you really focus on strengthening and building power if you want to avoid that injury again. And I actually was using the bent leg machine a lot more because I preferred it, but now I'm focusing a hell of a lot more on the straight leg on a leg press machine, and obviously single leg raises now that I'm doing them more often. I would say do the eccentrics of a single leg raise. Those really are important. Really focus on the height and trying to engage other muscles. So I would say we're obviously doing a lot of rehab for our our Achilles and calf muscle. You then want to think about strength. So think about, in the beginning, maybe doing 8 reps of something to 12 because you're just trying to start building up that muscle and that fluidity and that movement again. But then you want to really think about strength, and strength is built on the lower rep range but higher exertion range. So I went down to about 5 to 6 reps of really heavy stuff on my calf raises, which I'm still doing because I'd rather focus on strengthening them up for now rather than volume. Think about the kind of sports you're going to introduce. So for me, squash seemed like a nice one to get back to because of the sprung floor and something I'm used to doing. I am doing more Muay Thai and martial arts now from 18 months onwards, because in Muay Thai you actually naturally do a calf raise with kicks and a lot of the lower body movements that you do, which I think is just going to be great for rehabilitating and building resilience into my calf and Achilles muscle. So I would just say, think about those things for sure. Strength, power, which you can start building up, and then think about the muscle belly will grow, as you know, with muscle growth, kind of through hypertrophy, which is doing more repetitions, but that can come in time if you're really concerned about how your calf looks and you want to regain that size. Let's talk about mistakes in teachings before this video gets way too long. I would say one thing I noticed was when I ate carbs before a strength workout, this kind of should have already known, but I did a few of my Achilles rehab days on fasted workouts. Just have a banana, have some carbohydrates to fuel that workout when you're really going to go for that strength workout. I found I was able to push a lot harder, and of course that's the most important thing right now, is training that neuromuscular connection and really being able to drive strength through that Achilles. So try not to do it fasted. Think about having something to eat before you do train that Achilles. Try it with and without and see if it makes a difference for you. The other thing I think is interesting to think about is your trainer type. They did say people that tend to rupture their Achilles were probably wearing low profile shoes that had less kind of height around the ankle. So I've thought about that, and the trainers I bought for squash have a little bit more ankle coverage, at least for this period of recovery. I'd prefer to wear something like that. So maybe that might be something you want to have a think about. I've already mentioned something around floor types. Like I said, squash courts whenever I played on squash courts, the floors are sprung. It's such a good thing, and probably why Achilles ruptures, even though they do happen in squash, I imagine are probably less common because of the floor being sprung. The badminton courts I tend to play on in England are all purpose built courts that you can play football on and basketball and all the rest. And I don't feel like they are sprung, and definitely nowhere near as sprung as a squash court that really has a lot of bounce and give. And to protect my Achilles, it's better to be on sprung flooring, just like you might run and jump on grass versus concrete. We're not built to be doing all sorts of jumping and acrobatics on concrete. And I would say that's probably a big driver for why I ruptured my Achilles in the first place. The other mistake I made is forgetting you're not really exercising your non-injured Achilles in the normal way. So when you do get back to sport, again, just do it carefully, and to understand that you need to build explosivity, power, resilience into both Achilles when getting back to sport. Think about regressions, like I said. I think my recovery would have been a lot quicker and better had I regressed some of the exercises sooner and made more use of machines. The other thing you want to think about is in order to use that Achilles, let's say for a straight single leg calf raise, you have to use so many other muscles in order to even activate that area. Muscles in the feet, you need to squeeze and engage your glute. You need to have the ability to extend at the hips. So the thing to think about, and the way I still feel restricted physically at the moment, is that I feel like perhaps due to my injury, I've used this leg in a certain way that feels different to my right leg. And when I'm trying to perform a straight leg calf raise, even though my calf might not be still at the strength where it needs to be to get to the peak of that calf raise, I feel like there's limitations in other places like my quads and my glutes that are not engaging and helping me create that stability just to drive from the calf. So I would say focus on your rehabilitation of all areas and see if you can feel what I mean when I say that even if you can't do the movement, but where is the weakness coming from? It probably just isn't from your calf. It's probably from generally that whole region, that whole leg that has been, especially during your recovery, being used in a different way. That means some of the other muscles have probably regressed that you need to train. And for me, that's trying to activate this quad a lot more. So quad exercises are really useful, but also glute exercises that helps me create stability in that straight leg movement at the top of a calf raise. I forgot to mention it earlier, but I'll mention it here. At about the 9-month mark, we were doing a test, which was to see how high my right leg, my non-injured heel, would come off the ground when I did a single leg calf raise. It was about 9 centimeters. And then we're just doing a comparison to the left. The left was nothing in the beginning. It then got to about 3 or 4 centimeters. And the last time we did it, it was about 7. So as you can tell, there's still a 2 centimeter discrepancy, but I can tell you the feeling from being at 0, which was depressing when I was trying, to being at the calf raise ability of 7 now, with instability in that foot, is so much better. And I hope I get back to close to that 9, and I hope to keep continuing this rehab journey, as I've already mentioned. The last thing to mention around straight leg and bent leg is that actually you're kind of working different areas of that calf muscle. Your gastrocnemius is easier to build up strength in, it would seem, and your soleus tends to be worked a little bit more in that straight leg position. So just have a think about that. And if you're not seeing development in your calf muscle in the right areas, to maybe focus on one a little bit more. But like I said, the straight leg, at least for me, is the one I want to focus on regardless, because I got injured in the straight leg position. I said journey is personal, so it is personal to you. Don't forget that. Don't compare yourself. My journey hasn't been perfect. My physio tells me there's people older than me who have done the non-surgical route, who have been back jumping and doing all sorts, and he's been really impressed by them. Great. That's good news for me, because even though I might not have done it as quickly, I haven't set a ceiling on where I'm going to get to, because I'm just continuing this rehabilitation journey as much as I can. I'm really grateful at the point I've actually managed to get back to playing sports at the moment, but I still want to keep going. I'm not satisfied. So when it comes to that 1-year mark being a great indicator of your future success, I think it's reasonably helpful. But for someone like me who's still focusing on all aspects of recovery, including the muscles around that calf, I'm going to take it a lot further and outperform what these studies say. At least that's what I tell myself. Like I said, milestones are important. So I do think if you are in the first year of recovery, just focus on the first year. When you get to the first year, don't be overly pleased or overly down. Just think, year mark's done. The next mark that you want to kind of set some goals for is the 18-month mark. I did this test actually with my physio around the 15-month recovery period. And it was where they put this bar over my knee, and it was like a force plate test where I pushed down, and my left calf raise was about 70% of the strength of the right. And I would say, I think it was probably even less on the left, because when I did it, you do it as a double calf raise and they measure the strength difference. And I would say, because I couldn't push as hard as on my left, I think I didn't push probably as hard as I could have on my right. So I think, yeah, anyways, at 15th-month mark, my calf raise on my left leg was 70% of my right foot. So clearly still room for progression when I was at 15 months, still clearly room for progression now. The other thing to remember is my left calf was probably never as strong as my right, because I'm right-footed. So yeah, don't set the expectation that both feet will ever in reality be exactly the same, because even right now my right arm is stronger than my left arm by quite a reasonable degree. So yes, I want to rebalance those differences. But the reality of life is you're always going to be slightly more weighted to one side of your body because of our body's tendency to use the easiest route to do something, which is worth thinking about when we think about compensations. Getting back to sport, your body's going to let you get back to doing those movements, playing those sports, but it's going to do it in the easiest way possible, even if that means you're not using that left calf in the most optimal way. It will go for easy versus optimal. So you need to be doing your rehabilitation exercises outside of the gym to make sure your progression in that sport progresses in the way that it should, and that you don't put a limit on the physical aspect of you performing. Range of movement is an interesting one. So my physio was not a fan of trying to get full range of movement back into my ankle early on in the journey. He was far more concerned with strength, and he didn't want me stretching it for a really long period. And he rarely talked about stretching, in all honesty. And I quite like his approach, because I agree the strength aspect is really important, and you can get back length in the muscle through stretching. I would say I'm still lacking some flexibility and mobility in that left ankle, which I'll now start to focus on more. And I do think increasing mobility and flexibility in that joint actually helps with strength and power, because the whole movement becomes a little bit bigger. You can take momentum into the movement rather than working in a more isolated movement range. So I would say it's not been a big concern for me to be able to get the full flexibility back in that joint. I'm far more focused on power, strength, and mobility is now, and flexibility will be more of a concern now that I've got the strength back to a decent place, even though I'm continually working on it. Benefits of physio. I think this is an important sort of conversation or talking point. And I think the important thing I want to say is I felt really well supported in my physio. It helped that he also is a physio that works with the NBA, so I can be really confident in his ability to help me through my recovery, and the fact that he's dealing with this injury so often with other people who are on a much higher requirement in terms of their physical performance. I would say, do you need physio? I would say in terms of from the perspective of getting exercises to do to recover your calf muscle, I don't think so. The exercises I've given you in this video, there's nothing more, there's no secret. The only one I haven't actually talked about is the isometric. And the isometric is literally all of these exercises, but pushing without moving. So that would be a case of if you're doing a calf raise and you can actually do a calf raise, well, maybe put so much weight on there that you actually can't move, but still generating all that kind of strength and neuromuscular drive, but without any movement, is a really important part of the recovery process. So think about doing that, be it on the bent leg calf raise machine, and when you're doing a single leg calf raise on the leg press, you can do it with so much weight that you cannot move your heel, and your heel won't elevate at all. That's called an isometric, and it's really useful. And you can do that as part of your strength training. And again, I do it with 5 repetitions, and I push like hell. I am hanging onto the bars on the side of the leg press machine. I am putting 100%, I would say 110%, but I don't want to lie to you. I am putting 100%, 98% drive through, flexing absolutely everything, my biceps, my core, everything, to try and drive as much strength through that leg as I can, even if it's not moving. I put the same level of exertion into my strength training when there is movement as well. So I would say exertion levels are really important when you're doing this recovery work. If you really want to get onto that next stage of trying to get athletic performance back into that Achilles, you just have to put in a lot of effort when you're doing your exercises. Think about doing them, if I haven't talked about it, which I don't think I have, with 2-day rest intervals. The last thing I want to talk about, the benefits of physio. If you're not able to afford, and my physio was expensive in central London, as you can imagine, and he works with the MBA, like I said, so you can imagine it's not the cheapest option. It was really useful for me mentally to have an ultrasound machine in the room where he could do a scan and tell me something. I think the benefits of physio for me have been more mental than perhaps the physical nature. The exercises I could have got from videos, like perhaps this one, so I hope I'm emphasizing to you, do these exercises well and often, with enough rest that when you come back you can push harder than the last time and you see growth. If you're doing these exercises so often, you don't see growth, you see regression, and you're not lifting more weight when you get to that stage of the journey, then you should be taking more rest or loading up less weight, making some sort of change that you see a progression, because you can obviously overdo it at the same time. But I would say, if I go through this journey again, would I get physio? Absolutely, because I can afford it, and mentally it was a benefit for me to have these milestones, to have a marker, to have an external force holding me accountable. If you can't afford physio and you're not able to go, do I think it will affect your ability to recover? Absolutely not. I think through YouTube and people like me posting videos, and other people obviously, the exercise regime is pretty simplistic. You just want to be seeing progressions and listening to the stuff that I'm saying in here, doing the exercise I'm saying here, or finding others that maybe work better for you. But these are the ones I've done. I haven't kept any secrets. You may not get the benefit of having an external force holding you accountable, but you can hold yourself accountable. And if you're on less of a budget, then you're more motivated to keep yourself accountable as well, I think. So I don't think, in my opinion, your recovery will be impacted. But obviously, this is coming from someone who works in the health and fitness space anyways, who has a good degree of knowledge himself. So watch more videos, don't push too much that you injure yourself, try and perform exercises well. And this comes to my last point. And my last point is around engagement and daily life. So I think once you get back to living your normal daily life, it's so easy just to accept that you've recovered and you just walk without really engaging with your feet. For instance, you can walk with a certain gait pattern where you do this thing called a toe off, or you could just walk really lazily and never engage your feet. I walk quite lazily. I'm flat-footed, so naturally I do not toe off. But when I do toe off in my gait pattern when I walk, I can feel so much more engagement through the bottom of my feet, so strengthening my feet, but also my calf and Achilles. So my last recommendation is, in exercises, think about engaging the muscles you're trying to work, but also in everyday life. When you're standing up, you can actually put more weight into your quads and your hips, but you can also engage your feet. And there's a real big difference between the feeling. I can stand and it will look virtually the same in a lazy way where I'm not really engaging and pushing through my feet. And then I can really switch on my feet and push through my feet and engage my glutes and stand in a really active way. It looks exactly the same to the outside world with maybe small differences, but I can feel the activation through all the right muscle groups. I would say be more active in the engagement of the right muscle groups that you want to be working, not just in the gym, but in everyday life. This is something I have to remind myself of, and it's quite hard to do. And then I would say just utilize movements in everyday life where you can get a little bit more rehabilitation into that joint and tendon and muscle. For instance, walking down the stairs, I sometimes actually go down the stairs and rather than land and put my heel down, try and maintain a calf raise. So try and put my toe down and stay as high as I can while I'm putting weight through that leg coming down the stairs. As you can imagine, it's doing a bit of strength training by trying to keep my heel elevated as I'm coming down the stair, or at least slowly and controlled really reduce and release my heel to the stair. And similarly, if you're going up the stairs, you can do a little calf raise, right? So you don't have to just go step on and just use your quads and your glutes to get yourself up. That last portion of that step up can easily be you doing a little calf raise and taking your heel off the ground as high as you can. So utilize these little things that you can be doing to test and keep your Achilles working. That's it. I'm going to record a few exercises now and bed them back into the video, so you probably have already seen them, even though I'm recording them now. Apologies for recording this video so late. I hope it gives you more to go on. I hope it gives you some motivation to see the level I've got back to, even though my recovery hasn't been ideal and I've made many mistakes. I'm going to make a much cleaner, edited version of this, I hope, around the 2-year mark. So keep a lookout for that, maybe, if you will find it useful. But yeah, good luck with your Achilles recovery, and just get back to your health and fitness and make it a lifestyle choice rather than a specific choice to recover a tendon. And I'm sure you guys will be off to a flyer and doing really well. Okay guys, so I'm just going to talk you through a few of the exercises that I was doing. So the plyometric calf raise, which is knee up, calf raise up, knee up, right? So knee up, use a bit of the momentum to get your heel off the ground. Mine's still not super great, but as you can see, at least my in the beginning, there was like no drive. I would do this, my heel wouldn't come off the ground at all. Maybe as you progress in the future, you can add a hop. You've then obviously got your calf raise, double leg. Then you got your calf raise, double leg with your eccentric. So I take one foot off the ground and going down, yeah? Up at the top, you can put more weight into the chair to regress this, yeah? Come back down, same again. Nice and high, squeezing that glute. Helps me activate more of the less muscles on the back of my leg, try and straighten that knee out. And then coming back down. And then obviously you can use very light pressure on the chair. The other thing you can do is this, that's how it looks. Coming back down, looks on my injured side. Coming back down, you can see hips on my right side. I don't have to shift too much weight, I can just put the weight down. My left side, I'm struggling more. You can stay at the top. You can do switches, just trying to stay as high as you can. Really maintain and trying to straighten out the leg. Yeah, mine wants to bend. The other exercise for walking is a high heel walk. You're just trying to stay high on your heels. I haven't done these exercises for a while and I can feel that they're worse than they used to be. So just goes to show again, it's kind of just a lifelong journey with these things. But yeah, this was way better before. It's regressed a bit recently. So that's that one. Let me just show you, this is going to look a bit ridiculous, but without being in the gym, it's the only way I can show you this. So let's say for instance, this, or some sort of heavy plate. You got your calf raise, yeah, some sort of heavy weight over the front. You got your calf raise, you got your eccentric calf raise, you got one leg calf raise, bent leg, and this is gonna look super weird. It's the only way I can kind of demonstrate it for you right this second, which is with the leg press machine, so let's say for instance, you set yourself up normally, you've got the backrest, and that will be my foot. So normally if you're doing a leg press, your foot will be firmly on this thing, and you'd go push, push, push. But we're not doing that. We're using the leg press with a straight leg, and then we just use the platform to calf raise, and then back down again. In the beginning, don't go past neutral. In the future, you can maybe go into a bounce. That's what you're doing. And then if you had an isometric, you'd just be pushing with enough weight that nothing moves. You can obviously think about not just for all exercises, your isometric, your concentric, and your eccentric. You obviously got your straight calf raise, but like I said, there's way more going on in the ankle joint than just a straight calf raise. So you could start throwing in calf raises that work other parts, obviously with your feet turned out, and with your feet turned in. And you can do that on the leg press machine. Same sort of thing with your isometrics. So, exercises I've kind of given you. I don't want to give you your exercise structure, but let's think about these things. If you're trying to build a little bit more resilience or just get back to doing an exercise, maybe think about doing 8 to 12 reps of something and working within a weight that challenges you. Taking rest, like I said, but maybe 2 days between each session. Or maybe you're in a period of your recovery where you're actually just going for volume, so you're doing these daily. But again, you can't push to your maximum on a daily basis. You can't do strength exercises daily because you need a period for the muscles to recover. So try and track your progression journey and make sure you're improving. If you're just stagnating, there's something that needs to change in your journey, and that could just be taking a longer rest period and pushing harder. So that's that. I would say think about the 3 different sections of strength. So you want to build strength in a really low rep range. I would say maybe 5 repetitions or something. Powerlifters, want to build maximum strength, only lifting something once or twice. So think about doing that, especially when I was focusing on my strength, and as I am now, I have sessions where I'm just pushing for 4 or 5 really hard reps, but trying to activate as much neuromuscular drive as I can. So it's quite tiring because you're putting a lot of energy into just 5 reps. As you've seen, my Achilles, my calf muscle is not anywhere near the size of my right yet. So at some point I will probably start to think about volume to see if I can get volume and the size of that muscle back to what it was. And that's going to be an 8 to 12 rep range, 8 to 15 hypertrophy rep range. And obviously sort of getting muscular endurance into that muscle is really useful. But like I said, I'm doing things like squash. I'm going to get more involved with Muay Thai, which when you do all sorts of kicks, knees, requires Achilles, requires a calf raise. So I'm just trying to think about stuff like that. I'll get naturally muscular endurance, not muscular strength endurance. I'll get from maybe doing a lot more reps. Maybe start the day with 20 double leg calf raises. Nothing too excruciating, but building some natural resilience into the daily load I put under my body. So think about those things: strength, exercise endurance, muscular endurance, which is a bit of a higher rep range. And then finally the power is just, jumping, huge amounts of force going through, huge amounts of force on the concentric and eccentric load. So if we want to play any sorts of sports, most include a real high requirement for being able to put power through your muscles, not just be strong. And that's perhaps where the mistake comes in for many of us who go back to sport after being in the gym and doing a lot of strength training, is that we don't realize, even though we're very, very strong, we've lost a hell of a lot of power in our bodies, which we need to have, and that elasticity in those joints and tendons. So have a think. Those are kind of your rep ranges: strength 5, And lower, I would say 5 to 8, 5 to 12 for your sort of muscular endurance type work. If you're working slightly outside of the strength rep range, and yeah, and then just start to get involved with sports and other things to start putting some variability into your legs and lower portion of your body. I think that is enough from me. Good luck with your Achilles recovery.